Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for being here. This is the weekly live stream I do where you guys get to ask me questions, anything about careers, job search, resumes, job interviews, applications, networking, the posted job market, the hidden job market, all that stuff. It's all good. Anything related to that stuff is perfectly fine. Yes, and as always, a shout out goes out to all my YouTube channel members. Join my channel. Membership has the privileges. And also to my Patreons, to my super thanks donors. Those are always nice to get. And to my viewers and participants, that's you guys. Thank you so much for being here. If I can help you out, that's the whole point of this. If you are a subscriber to my channel and you have been for any amount of time, you should be able to get into the chat and ask me questions, and I will do my best to help you out. That's the whole point. The title of today's episode, this is episode 144 of How to Get Hired. It's called How Do You Handle Stress? Best Answer. So we're going to be kicking things off by talking about that, and then we'll get into your questions. Yeah, and I got my widgets working again, so you guys can see the viewer count at any time, and also this little blue box here will mirror the questions that I see in the chat. So there you go. Okay, let's get right into this. So you go to a job interview, and they ask you the question, so how do you handle stress, right? That is one of the standard job interview questions. There's about 10 of these. They're cliched. You're always going to encounter them in some form. Things like, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work here? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your salary expectations? All that kind of stuff. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why do you leave your last job? Do you have any questions for us? That kind of thing. And this is one of the standard questions. How do you handle stress? So this is common. So you should have an answer ready for it. Now, when you ask, chatbots like ChatGPT, you ask them, like, what's the best answer for this question? They give you a very generic template, boilerplate kind of answer where you say, I handle stress well. And then you give like an example of, how you've handled stress and all this kind of stuff. And I disagree. That might be good for if you're going to your first job interview, maybe. If you're going for a very low-level job, okay, you're just starting out, fair enough. It's better than going, and like not saying anything. But it's really not very sophisticated. The other answer that I see a lot of people giving for this question, which I also disagree with, is they ask you, how do you handle stress? And the answer that some people recommend is to talk about how you avoid stress. Well, I'm organized and I, try to work things out so that, I never get stressed, right? Well, once again, that might be fine at a basic level. You're going to your first job interview. Great. Okay. But if you're at a slightly more sophisticated level, you're not at the entry level, you're going for a professional job or a management type job. That's not going to cut it because that's not what they asked you. They didn't say, how do you avoid stress? They said, how do you handle it? Because you can't always avoid it. Sometimes things are stressful. And all the pre-planning and organization in the world won't prevent the stress from occurring. It's upon you. How do you handle it? That's what we want to know. Okay, so that's technically what the question is. It's not a general question about stress. It's specifically, how do you handle it? Now, the problem is that if you were to get into it with the interviewer and really discuss this, it's bad for you because how do you get into it? Well, you talk about all the times in the past where you've been stressed, right? What you've had to do to manage your stress, what the results were. Most people are regular human beings, and sometimes stress just gets to you. So in order to get into this topic, it involves you talking about previous times you were stressed, all the things you've done to manage stress, maybe the great lengths you might have gone to that might be problematic in themselves, trying to mention that, things like this. So the point is, this question is not good to really get into the weeds on. So that's why I recommend the answer that I have for many years. Just if they ask you, how do you handle stress? You simply say, I handle stress very well. And then you don't engage on the question. You shut the hell up and you wait for them to move on. They say, how do you handle stress? You say, oh, I handle stress very well. Just like this, right? You're not going to keep talking. You let them talk. Now, most cases, what'll happen is the interviewer will say, okay, and then they'll just move on to the next question, right? If you do need to say something else, they really prompt you. You could say something very boilerplate like, well, a certain amount of stress is unavoidable, but it's never been a problem for me in the past. And then you shut up and then you let them move on. The ball's back in their court, right? You're not going to get into it. They're going to have to really, if they want you to get into it, they're going to have to ask very specific things. So most of the time that will work. Okay. There are times when they really want to push and they really want to get into it. In which case it's starting to turn into more of a behavioral based question where you're going to have to tell a story from your past about something you did. And then I would refer to how you handle any other behavioral question. You're going to be pulling from the 10 or so stories that you've prepared, whichever one is the most appropriate. You're going to tell that story and handle it that way. Okay, but that's my approach to handling this question. That's what I recommend to most people. And away you go. I would ignore the standard, typical boilerplate answer to this question where you get into talking about how you've been stressed and what you've had to do, giving silly little kiss-off things like, oh, I listen to music or I go work out. Maybe I should say that. Oh, I work out. Maybe I should gain 300 pounds more and then give that answer. We'll see what they say. I would also avoid giving an answer that talks about stress avoidance because, once again, that's not what they're asking about. They're talking about how you handle it. Okay? So that's why I give the answer I recommend, which is just to say, oh, I handle stress very well. And then shut up. Let them move on. If you're forced to say something, you might say something like, a certain amount of stress is unavoidable, but, it's never been a problem for me in the past. There you go. And that's all. So hopefully that answers the question very quickly. We didn't spend much time on this, but we don't need to spend much time on it. How do you handle stress? That's the answer I recommend for it. Okay, over to you guys. Now it's up to, it's just me answering your questions. So we got A from LA says, good morning, everyone. Good morning, A from LA. It's always entertaining reading some of the names here. I don't know how to pronounce this, but I'm going to try because, good things happen when I try. Piyush More says, thank you, sir. You're welcome, Piyush More. Good name. Samuel Wesley 668 says, nice topic. Well, thank you. Yeah, this is one of the standard job interview questions, so it does come up. And Huz Indy 8792 says, great live. Well, thank you. Thank you. Those tend to be nice things. People are saying nice things. So thank you for being here. This is your opportunity to ask me any questions. If there's anything you're struggling with or wondering about when it comes to careers or job search, and how to get hired, that's what we're here to talk about. So get in the chat and let me know your questions, and I will do my best to help you out. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the questions to roll on in, as a reminder, check out that course. Let's see, which way do I got to point? This way? My Get Hired course. All my advice in one place. If you are struggling to get hired, that teaches you how to get hired in the posted job market and how to get hired on the hidden job market. And it's catered mainly to introverts. So if you are an introvert, you don't like to socialize with 50 people you don't know all the time for fun, if that's not you, check out that course because that's how to break into the hidden job market. If you've heard of the hidden job market, you need to hear about the hidden job market. 80% of jobs that are out there are never posted, right? So we call that the hidden job market. It's not that the jobs are hidden, it's just that they haven't taken the step of publicizing it on the internet to the general public, right? The job is still there. You can still get it. It's just that you can't discover it doing like an internet job search or something, right? So that's what the hidden job market is. So that's where you want to be looking, because that's where 80% of the jobs are, including pretty much almost all of the good ones. Okay, we got some activity in the chat. Thank you very much. AESRI Project says, hey, hi, sir. Thank you very much. Several months ago, I got my first tech-related job because of your tips. Thanks. Well, that's great to hear, AESRI Projects, and thank you for letting me know. That makes my day hearing that kind of stuff. I'm glad you're prospering. Keep on keeping on. David ZZ007 says, if they insist on giving an example of how you handle the stress in the past, then what do you do? Well, like I mentioned, then the question turns into a behavioral question, okay? Because if they're asking for a specific story from you, right, that's a behavioral question. So you answer that the way you would answer a behavioral question. Now, just as a brief recap, how do you handle behavioral questions? Well, here's the deal. Behavioral questions, there's an infinite number of them, okay? It's not possible to prepare like individually for every single behavioral question they could possibly ask you. It's just impossible. I could make one up, an original one right off the bat. I could say, tell me about a time that you felt really stressed when you were handling a new project because you were working with new people, and there was a tight deadline. How did you handle that? Right? Like there's a question about stress. It's a behavioral question. And have you prepared for that specifically? No, because there's a lot of elements to it, right? So the way you handle behavioral questions is you do it kind of in reverse. You memorize answers, you memorize stories, right? And then you go to the interview with, say, 10 stories. This is stuff from your past, okay? These stories are things you've vetted, right? You've practiced, you've rehearsed telling these stories in the STAR format or any other similar format, right? And so these are on the forefront of your mind, at the forefront of your mind. So when you go to the interview, any kind of behavioral question they ask you, tell me about a time, insert whatever, you're going to pull out one of those 10 stories, the one that kind of most closely matches what they specifically asked you, and you're going to tell that story. You may tweak the wording a little bit based on precisely what they asked you, but that's how you answer those questions. So you will never be stumped for what to say when they ask you a behavioral question, because the answer is going to be one of those 10 stories, right? So for example, if they're asking you like that stress question, tell me about a time you were stressed, working on some project because you were working with new people and there was a tight deadline. Of the 10 stories that you had prepared about things you've done, maybe your accomplishments, maybe interesting things that happened, what's the one that's closest to that? If you've had accomplishments, you've worked towards something, I'm sure there was stress involved, right, in everything you've had to do, right? So, okay, which one are you going to pull out to talk more specifically about it in terms of the stress? It's going to be one of those, right? Have you ever done anything with there was possibly new people, So you pull out one of those 10, and that way, you have an answer, and it gives them what they're looking for. You're saying I did this thing a few years ago. I was assigned to do this. This is what I did. It involved working with a couple of new people. I didn't know them, but I did have to work closely together with them. Anyway, we did this, and it turned out really well. We delivered whatever it was on time. I had to learn how to work with those people on the fly. It was pretty stressful because they weren't, they had different work styles. They were strangers. They had different communication styles. They had a different background, and that led to a bit of friction. But, through communication, I overcame it and we accomplished it and we were commended for it. There you go. Okay, how's that for a long-winded answer? But hopefully that answers your question there, David Zerz007. The name's David. Zerzi David. Richard Tusudo says, need your help. Where is that course? I've been interviewing for about a year now, and I've been to many interviews, but I get so stressed that I end up saying things I don't even mean. Okay. Listen, Richard, as much as I'd love to sell you a course or whatever, it doesn't sound like that's really what is needed here. The way I and other people recommend that you practice for job interviews and prepare for them is kind of a two-step thing, right? So you've probably done the first step, which is to work by yourself. Like you memorize answers to questions, you figure out what you're going to say, and then you sort of memorize those answers, right? You can work like in front of a mirror, you can work by, talking to yourself, but you're working by yourself. It's a solo endeavor, right? The second stage or phase of how to prepare for something like a job interview is you prepare with a second person, okay? Now, on the surface, especially if you're an introvert, this is going to seem excessive. It's going to seem optional. It's going to seem like, oh, that's not really necessary to do, right? So I can ignore it. Well, the thing is, as you probably guessed by what you've just said in your question, the real challenge for doing things like job interviews for a lot of people is not necessarily coming up with the answer to the question. The problem is the social pressure, right? You go, if it's a face-to-face interview, or even if it's like a teleconferencing type interview, like a Zoom call, you got strangers staring at you while you're giving these answers. You get very nervous. There's a lot of social pressure. It clouds your judgment. It prevents you from thinking. You have like a reaction to nervousness. It makes you sweat. It makes you feel uncomfortable. You can't speak properly. Like things like this. Like that's the stuff that really is the challenge, right? So in order to overcome that problem, okay, you need to practice with another person. Now, there's a couple of options here, okay? The first option, if you've got money and you want to really do this properly, is you can go out and hire a career coach, okay? I'm not a career coach, but other people work as career coaches. Usually a lot of recruiters, they work as career coaches. So the idea is you pay them money. It's like an hourly kind of thing. And what they'll do is they'll do mock interviews with you. So it's like a dry run, it's practice for you. You've done your preparation on your own. Now you've got someone like staring at you and you're doing a pretend job interview. They're asking you questions. You're having to give answers. And you feel like, okay, this is what it feels like in a real job interview. I got someone staring at me. I feel nervous. You're tackling that part of the problem, right? Now, as an added bonus, they can then give you feedback and say, here's how I think you did. And here's some recommendations for what, I recommend you change or you work on, right? Okay, so that's the tool for getting comfortable doing an interview, where like nervousness and stuff is the big issue, okay? Now, if you don't have the cash to do that, because that's like a high-end thing, a lot of executive managers stuff do that. But like, a lot of people lower down do it too. But you can always grab a friend or family member. If you have people like loitering around your house or whatever, your place, these people that are just like sucking up oxygen and not doing any good to themselves or anyone else, just grab them and say, listen, I need your help, okay? You can give them a list of job interview questions or tell them to go and write their own. and say, we're going to do a pretend job interview. You're going to interview me, and we're going to do it like it's the real thing. And the whole point of this is for me to get practice, actually giving answers to somebody in a real type situation. Okay? Now, you don't just do one or two of these. Okay? What I'd recommend is you do sort of like 2 weeks. Okay? If in 2 weeks, so that's like 5 work days, Monday through Friday. So 10 days in that 2 weeks, you do 3 to 4 mock interviews a day. That means 30 to 40 mock interviews in that 2-week period. If you do that, you're going to kick ass. You're going to know the answers to certainly all the common questions, like just backwards and forwards. You don't have to think on your feet at all. And you're going to be used to like somebody staring at you as you're giving answers. So that overcomes a lot of these problems, right? So that's what I'd recommend. And what it means is that you make all your rookie mistakes in the mock interviews, and not in real interviews where you lose the job. You blow the job, right? So that's what I'd recommend. That's how you can work on this stuff. Okay, there are a lot of people that offer career coaching services. I don't offer that, but every 2 weeks I do a collaboration with another YouTuber. Her name is Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance, not work-life balance, Life Work Balance. You could start with her. I know she offers that service, so you could check that out. Or just grab friends and family members that can serve too. It might not be as sophisticated, but it can also help. So hopefully that makes sense. That'll help with the stress. Nevin Miskovic says, great channel, always bringing value. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Nevin. Fred 2 Museum 3852 says, tomorrow I have an interview, but I'm a bit anxious. Fred, you're going to do fine. Okay. Just go in there and just, try and as much as humanly possible, just think of it as like you're talking to a friend. Okay. I know it doesn't feel like that at all, but just do it like you're talking to a friend. Okay. Just do your best. You're going to be fine. These things depend more on random chance than they depend on anything you have control over. So just go in there and do your best, and you're going to be fine. Okay. Best of luck to you. Richard says, haha, wow, I think you're absolutely right. I'll give it a go. And once I get hired, I'll let you know how it turned out. Okay, awesome. Yeah, best of luck, Richard. It really does seem unnecessary, doesn't it? You learn the answers, you know what you're doing. Like, why do I need to involve somebody else in this? It's just a pain in the ass. But you really do, especially if you get nervous, especially if you're an introvert, that's the big challenge, You walk in there, you look uncomfortable, you feel uncomfortable, you can't remember anything you're saying, stress and nervousness does weird things to a person, and so overcoming it is a pretty big deal, It's not something you can just snap your fingers and overcome. You got to work towards it, and you know what I mean. So that's how it works. So best of luck with that. You're welcome. Jenia Calderon says, I haven't landed a job yet, but I know I will soon. Well, best of luck to you, Jenia. If I'm saying your name right, I'm sure I'm not. I never say anybody's name right. It's never held me back. Yes, I put my foot in my mouth constantly when I try and pronounce people's names. In person, too. In person. That's kind of something I just have never... I've never improved on. I know I'm not the only one, but it's a sign of great people skills if you remember people's names and you address them by their name, because what that does is it sort of communicates you're important enough that I'm remembering your name. This isn't just some casual, kiss off kind of exchange, like, I care about who you are. You're important to me. You're so important. I've committed your name to memory. And the other thing is that people like being addressed by their name. It gives them a good feeling, like, oh, you know who I am, right? You must think highly of me, and therefore I like you, that kind of thing. So I know this is a thing. Personally, I've been terrible at it. I've tried to work on it over the years, but, dog new tricks. I just can't do it. Best of luck to you, Fred. And I see Richard. Richard has joined as a member. Thank you, Richard. Welcome. And I wish you every luck. Timothy says, so much of interviewing well is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Well, I would argue it's overcoming being uncomfortable, and you're never going to feel like 100% comfortable unless you're some kind of weird psychopath, but you can dial it down so that, it's not a problem. You feel a little on edge, but you're not going to like fall asleep right in front of them. You're not that comfortable, but it's not at the point where it impacts you, where you can't speak or you can't think. Right? That's the idea. The mock interviews are just practice being uncomfortable. Well, like, listen, how do you get good at a sport? How do you get good at a musical instrument? You screw up in the beginning, right? But the point is you work at it. Now, yes, attempting it when you don't know what you're doing, if you're playing a sport, like you're trying to play hockey or something, you don't know how to skate, you're going to fall on your ass. That if the priority is never ever to fall, like to absolutely minimize the amount of times you fall on your ass, then you won't practice, right? But then you won't be able to play the sport. If you have to play the sport, then one would conclude you have to practice, right? And if you fall down a few times, oh well, but it's for a greater good, which is overcoming, not knowing how to play it or not being able to skate. You will learn to skate. It doesn't mean that we should always shy away from it, right? The challenge, of course, is that when we're between jobs, it does not feel good. Our self-esteem takes a massive hit. We've never been less confident about ourselves and our lives. And it's right at that time that you get the most rejection you're ever going to get in your life. And at the same time, you have to appear your most confident. Like it's a terrible mix, right? But the flip side of this, like, listen, the flip side of this is that, some people who do hire career coaches, it's almost like going to court and you've got like a lawyer standing there with you. Like they're on your side. They're with you. You've got somebody backing you up. It makes you feel more confident. I've got an expert in my court that's helping me, that's backing me up, So that can sometimes make up for it. That's why a lot of people do it. And like why a lot of people, go to therapy and things like that, because you've got somebody that's listening, somebody that's on your side, that's the idea. So it can help. Okay. I'm not trying to sell you on like paying for coaching, whatever. Go work with a friend or family member, don't pay anything. Just find someone. Hopefully you're fortunate enough to have someone around that can give you the time of day and maybe help you a little bit. Same thing, right? They're helping you with it. They're encouraging you. It can help in these situations. Treeleaf says, I've been working off and on as a contractor for a publishing company for the past 6 years. I'm about to start a new project and worked up the courage to ask about a pay raise. And I was told yes. Okay, right on. That stuff is always very delicate, asking for a pay raise, because, it's one of those situations where it really depends on your boss. It's entirely up to your boss. They can say no, and most of the time, there's no consequences for them. People don't leave. People stay right where they are. They just take it. They say they're going to leave. They say they're going to disengage, but they don't. That's the reality that a lot of people don't want to fess up to. a lot of times the boss is not able to just give you a raise, like just because you ask for one. They just don't. It's not that they don't want to, it's that they can't. They don't have the money. You know what I mean? And the default response for most bosses is always going to be no. Because the default position for employees is that they always universally feel like they're underpaid. No matter how much they're paid, no matter how hard they work, pretty much almost universally they feel they're underpaid for what they're doing. Okay, that's a very common thing. So bosses who have any experience, they have experienced their employees coming to them and saying, I feel that I'm underpaid. I need more money. They might even make a threat and say, if you don't pay me more money, I'm going to leave. But what most bosses who have been around the farm a few times know is that those threats are like 90% of the time, they're empty threats. The employee doesn't leave. That takes effort, It doesn't really take much effort to ask for something, but it does take effort to like find a whole other job and then move, So that's the reality. So the fact that you asked for it and got it, that's really good. That either says that your boss is a really good person that really does value their employees and will bend over backwards to help them, or you were genuinely underpaid, and they're correcting an oversight or a situation that they were hoping you wouldn't notice. And now that you've noticed it, they know that they better fix that, or somebody else is going to snap you up. You know what I mean? So either way, it's a good thing. Congratulations. Okay, we're half an hour into this. We got 22 people here. Thank you for being here. If you are looking to get hired and you're at a point where you just don't understand how this stuff works, you don't understand what to do or what you can do, okay, check out that course, my Get Hired course. It's all my advice in one place, and it covers how to get hired in the posted job market for jobs that are posted publicly, like that you can find on the internet, as an example, and how to get hired in the hidden job market. That's where 80% of the jobs are. They're not posted publicly. How do you get them? In one word, networking. That's how you get them. Most people don't understand networking, especially younger people or people just starting out. You don't know. Unfortunately, they don't really teach this anymore. Or if they ever did, they've stopped. This is how most people get hired, through networking. If you ask, 100 people who have jobs just at random, how did you get your job? Most people, like more than 50% of them, they're not going to say, oh, I applied cold on the internet. They're going to say, oh, I know a person who put in a good word for me and made me aware of this job. And then I said, yes, I want it. And I came and I talked to the manager and they interviewed me once and then they hired me. Like there's going to be a personal sort of connection right there, right? Now, if this is new to you and you don't know of this or you are doubting it, don't take my word for any of this. Go out, do your own independent research. This is what you're going to find. Okay? 80% of jobs are not posted. Now, I'm going to do something that I've done before. I do this because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't believe me when I say stuff like this. So in the absence of any questions, just for the moment, let's do this. Okay, so of all the jobs that are posted that, I could possibly get, how many of those, like what percentage of them are actually posted publicly that I'd be able to discover on an internet job search? Okay, I mean, this is ChatGPT. You could go to Grok, you could go to Gemini, you could go, you could just go to Google and you could look up articles and things. But I'm doing this because when I say some of the stuff, like some people don't believe me. Let's zoom in. Okay, the percentage of jobs that are posted publicly can be found on an internet job search is actually quite low, estimated to be about 20 to 30%. It's actually somewhere between 15 and 20 approximately, traditionally. The majority of job openings, especially high quality or senior level roles, are filtered through networking and referrals rather than through public job boards. Okay, now what does it say here? Especially high quality and senior roles. Yeah, but we're talking about the vast majority of jobs, worker level jobs too, not just this executive level stuff. Many employers prefer to hire candidates through word of mouth or recruiting agencies. Well, no, this is not recruiting agencies. This is like word of mouth, meaning a substantial portion of the job market is hidden. This is known as the hidden job market, and tapping into it requires strategies like direct outreach, building relationships, and leveraging your network. Now, what I want to make clear to everyone, if this is new to you, is that this is not dependent on you knowing a million people. You can do this without knowing a single solitary person. Okay? Direct outreach is the main thing. It's the easiest way into this. That's where you contact employers. If you know who to talk to and you know what to say, it's actually pretty easy to do, and it's very, very effective. So I'm not going to get any more into that right now, but if this is all new to you, it's worth your while to go and do your own research and learn about it, okay? Okay, let's see here. Nothing new, really, just helicopter ween. You forgot the apostrophe between the two E's in helicopter ween. As everybody knows, when you look that up in the dictionary, it's got the apostrophe. It says, hello, everyone. Hello, helicopter ween. Thank you for joining us. If you got any questions, let us know. This is about answering your questions. That's what I'm here to do. Okay, so if this is all new, if this is like, you're kind of skeptical about this stuff, too good to be true, look into it. It's not too good to be true. This is how people get jobs. This is how people always have gotten jobs. This is how people are going to get jobs for the foreseeable future. AI is not going to touch it. Advances in internet technology and, teleconferencing are not going to touch it. ATS and AI filters are not going to touch it. This is how you get hired. Right? The thing that throws a lot of people is that when we're young, we go to school, and what do you learn in school? You learn how to conform. It's not all a conspiracy theory. There's reasons why school is run the way it is. You've got lots of students controlled by a few teachers and administrators, and it makes it possible if everybody follows rules, right? Okay, nothing necessarily bad with that. The only problem is that as a sort of unintended side effect, we come out of school and we're taught to conform. We're taught to always follow rules, and we're taught that, we don't have to initiate anything. Somebody's going to be along that will tell us what the process is and tell us, give us permission to start following the process. And that's how we succeed, right? That's what we're used to. The problem is when school ends and you get out into the real world, there isn't anybody telling you this is how everything works, this is what you do, and giving you permission to go out and do it, right? So things like networking, it's like you have to figure out how this stuff works, and you have to take the initiative to start doing it on your own. There's no gatekeepers. This is a free society. You can talk to whomever you wish. You don't need anyone's permission to talk to somebody, right? They have the perfect right not to want to engage with you, but if you approach the right people, you say appropriate things to them, that can legitimately help them out, right? Good things usually happen. So this is like networking. This is how networking works. So if you haven't begun this journey to understanding networking, and you're looking for a job, it's well within your interest to learn. If you're an introvert, you don't like schmoozing with people, you don't like cold calling people, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You have to interact with people. You could do it on social networking. You could do it your way. But this is what it's about. Okay, we got some stuff here. So, Vital Eurosov says, I had a couple of jobs in the past I got via networking. The last 3 jobs I got hired via applying directly on LinkedIn without knowing anyone at the company. Yeah, exactly. That's called the posted job market. And yes, that still works, but like we established about 5 minutes ago, that's about 20% of jobs get filled that way, right? So it's still, you can still get a job that way. It's effing hard, but you can. One of the reasons why it's so hard is because even though the posted job market only has something like 20% of the jobs in it, you have something like 80% of the candidates looking there. So it's very competitive. That's why there's like hundreds and hundreds of applicants for like every job they post. That's why they need things like ATS to filter their applications, because there's so many of them, you know? The hidden job market doesn't work that way. Hidden job market, there's like 1 or 2 applicants for every job, you know, on average. So already the competition is substantially less. So if you're putting yourself up for like a hidden job, you're going up against 1, 2, maybe 3 people tops, you know? It's a lot easier than going up against 800 people and beating them hands down when they're trying to level the playing field on all of you, you know? Networking, the reason why it works is because a lot of times you get the job because, not because you're the best candidate that beat 800 people hands down. It's because you're the one that showed up, right? You're the one that expressed interest. You're the one that showed initiative and went after it. That's what gets you the job, usually, right? Ween's short for wiener. Oh, okay. I thought it was like a Halloween thing, you know? So I didn't pick up on that. That went right over my head, but I guess it's cultural. So there you go. Wouldn't be the first time. Treeleaf says, along with the contracting, I do other part-time work. I just got a new job in my field by directly reaching out to a company. I use the internet to search for local companies and contacted a few. Yeah, there you go. That's direct outreach. That's what it is, right? You know, now if anyone's interested, I'm not trying to get you to leave or anything, but in the description box below this live stream, okay, in the description box, I've put links to various things. And one link is to a video I've done. It's one of my videos called How Successful People Get Jobs. And that shows, like, it's like a video of my desktop on my computer as I'm doing direct outreach. So you can see one form of what direct outreach looks like if you've never done this kind of thing before. Okay? Basically, the first stage is to use Google Maps, right? You find your location, and then you find all the employers around you that have potential to hire someone like you. Okay, so you've got a list of names of organizations, like companies or whatever, right? The second step is then to go on LinkedIn, and then you look up each of those companies. You see inside of each of those companies to the individuals. Here's the person in this role. Here's their name. Here's about them. It gives you 2 things. First of all, you know the right person to try and contact. Secondly, it is itself the means of contacting them, because you can send a message directly over LinkedIn. So it's one method of doing direct outreach. Now, that method is good for introverts because you don't have to cold call anybody. You don't have to show up in person and talk to anyone in person. Like, you know, the only time when it would go beyond this stage is if they received a message from you and then invited you in and said, like, yes, we want to talk to you. Come down. Can you please come down? I would very much like to meet you and speak with you. And when you do, by the way, it doesn't feel like a job interview. It feels like a referral. They're asking you to come down and meet with them. So they tend to be very nice, and they tend to like give you the time of day and be excited that you're there and be very polite. You know, completely different to like how job interviews run. Job interviews, like they normally treat you like cattle, you know, like you're a number. You know, they're like up on their high horse thinking like, oh, you know, all these people that want something from me, And, I'm the decider and I can decide. So I have all this power. And by God, I'm going to throw it around and make it felt. I'm going to treat these people like the scum that they are. Tell me if you've been through that before, So, so anyway, like the direct outreach stuff, it can be very, very positive going through it, as a process. It's a lot more positive and encouraging than going through applying to posted internet jobs. It feels much more positive and encouraging. My close personal buddy, Vital Urasov 8525 says, yes, networking is the king. You're absolutely right. You're right. And it's got the word king in there. So we can all tell that. It's obvious. Treeleaf says, the company where I was hired is very small. It worked very much like that. I reached out, and when they called me back, that very conversation, I was asked to come in for an interview right away. Yeah, see, this is one of the advantages of working for small companies. I spent the first half of my career working for big, like enterprise, multinational corporations, things like this. So that was very much like how I assumed everything worked. That was the world of business. Second half of my career, worked at small companies. Totally different, night and day. Now, my experience was very positive because one of the advantages is you don't have formalized procedures for everything. If you just want to talk to candidates, you can just damn well talk to candidates, just come on in, let's talk. And hiring was an example of that. They see someone they like, someone that shows some enthusiasm. They seem to have the skills, they have all the soft skills. They seem professional and polite and all that and enthusiastic. So they say, hey, just come on down. Let's talk. And then it's kind of very loose, very informal. You just have more of a conversation rather than an interrogation. And then a lot of times they'll just say, sure, you're hired, and you go from there. So I like that. I like that sort of much more human way of interacting with people. Everything's not so unnecessarily formal. You know what I mean? Guy03i says, is LinkedIn any use besides a skills and experience profile? They seem to have lost their control of scams and bots. Yeah, well, that's the magic of having Microsoft in charge now. Microsoft, everything they touch seems to turn to shit. LinkedIn is another example of like a company that, really kicked ass and created something really good. But a few years ago, it was acquired by Microsoft. Microsoft, it seemed like they were doing everything in their power to turn it into like the Facebook of business. You know how like Facebook is just, there's so much fluff and spam and slop on there, and then they're trying to get everyone and their brother to use it rather than have it be like a very professional thing just for business, So they've really changed it quite a bit. And you're right, there's a lot of scams and things like that are on there and bots. Doesn't mean that it's useless. It's still far from useless. There's a lot of good stuff there. But you're right, it has kind of moved in that direction a bit. Is it any use? Yes, it's useful for several things. First of all, it's great for what we're talking about here, doing direct outreach. Right? You use it as a research tool to see who's out there and, investigate who's on the inside of organizations. It's great to be able to identify people that you might want to contact or talk to for a variety of reasons. So not only is it great for reaching out, it's great for research. So there's still a couple of really useful things. Now, I don't think it's great for post jobs. I know a lot of people use it almost like Indeed. They go there just to like scan the job postings and then apply directly. I don't think it's great for that. I think that there's a lot of issues with that on LinkedIn. Similar issues that you have with like places like Indeed, like all the job aggregators. So I've never used it for that. I've never posted jobs on there, that kind of thing. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about it, but it's great for the other things. Somebody, Sergey, says hello, and that's Grigorev. Sergey says hello to Grigorev Sergey. There are 24 people here. Get in the chat and let me know if you have questions about careers, about job search, about networking, all that stuff. Resumes, job applications, discovery of jobs, all that kind of stuff. That's what we're here to talk about. Soft skills, hard skills, like anything connected with this. Someone says, hi from Tunisia. Well, hello. Are you in Tunis, the capital city of Tunisia? Don't often hear from Tunisians on this podcast, so that's especially exotic. And there you go. Okay, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about. I can give you a hand with that. Also, as a reminder, I have 2 other YouTube channels, The Company's Expert 2 and The Company's Expert 3. So if you are not subscribed to those, maybe go check those out. As you can see on the screen, right here, The Company's Expert 2 is additional stuff about job search for job seekers. And The Company's Expert 3 is about entrepreneurship and business. So if you're interested in that, that's also something I talk about. I have a weekly podcast or live stream, I should say, on entrepreneurship, because it is part of this discussion. Jobs, like working for an employer, is not the only way of making money in this world. It's certainly the default method for a lot of people, but it's not by any means the only method. So increasingly, a lot of people are working for themselves, doing the entrepreneurship thing. That's more of my core competency, to be honest, than talking about job search. And I openly encourage it. If you go about it in an intelligent way, it's certainly a really good option for a lot of people. And, coincidentally, there's never been a more convenient, like an easier time to do this than now. As we go into the future, it's easier and easier for people to become entrepreneurs and work for themselves. It's not for everyone, but, for a lot of people, it's a viable option. And so if you have a curiosity about that, maybe you're not ready to do that yet, but, you're curious about it, you're intrigued by it. Maybe in the future you'd like to do that. I would encourage you, learn all you can, and you never know where it goes. I myself have been working for myself for quite a few years. I did the corporate career thing. I got to be the CEO of a small company, and then I ended my corporate career and just became essentially an entrepreneur, a consultant and an advisor and a YouTuber, which is what I do now. So I recommend that stuff to everybody. If you're in certain industries, it can really be a viable thing. So yeah. So if you have any interest in that, check out The Company's Expert 3, that YouTube channel. And I do a weekly live stream called Side Hustle Ideas, where we talk about side hustles. I like side hustles because it's a great way to put your toe in the water of entrepreneurship, and learn to make money directly without needing an employer. But yet it minimizes the risk. You do it on the side. You keep your day job. You're not like taking major personal or financial risks. It's something that it's a wonderful thing. It's available for everybody. So, yeah, if you're that type of person, I encourage you to learn all you can about it. The more you know, the further you'll go. Treeleaf says, what are some of the disadvantages and advantages of working for small versus large companies? Okay, well, that's a great question. Very intelligent question. It's a very general question. Like everything I say is going to be very general in response to that, because it varies, obviously, by industry and by country and by organization. But Some of the general things are large organizations, they tend to be more efficient. They make more money for the amount of people that they have, right? That's because they usually have economies of scale, so they can be more efficient. The problem is that they like they're more efficient in a marketing sense, in an economic sense, that they can generate a lot more revenue than a one-man or a one-person company could, all things being equal. However, they tend to be operationally less efficient. So they tend to have more of an administrative overhead. They tend to be very bureaucratic, very overly formal. So they lose a lot of their efficiencies in running their business. That's the irony. They tend to make more money, for the amount of people they have. So great, you've got even more revenue, but then they tend to blow more of that revenue on silly frictional things, right? So it tends to be very formal. They tend to have rules for everything, right? Also, another thing that happens with big organizations is that instead of like in a small company, maybe one person handles the whole process. They'll talk to the customer. They'll go and do the work. They'll go and deal with the billing and the accounting and all that. Like it's all one person does the whole thing, right? In larger organizations, they tend to cut that up and spread it, like distribute it over like many, many people. And you tend to have lots of handoffs. And that tends to promote a feeling of like a lack of ownership of the process. Nobody owns the process. You just do your little piece of it, and then who cares about the rest, right? So there's a lot of interesting social effects that happen. It's very impersonal. You tend to get a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of process-focused people rather than results-focused people, right? You know what I'm saying? So depending on the details, sometimes having a lot of rules can help, but sometimes it can be a real hindrance. It can just, like, why can't we just go do this thing? It's just simple. Like, no, you can't do it. You can't just walk across the hall to somebody and get that piece of paper. No, there's all kinds of protocol and rules and people that have to approve that first. And, it gets ridiculous sometimes. Small companies, they tend to be more informal. They don't have written rules about how you do everything. A lot of times you make it up as you go along and you do whatever you feel like doing. Now that can have advantages. It can also be the source of disadvantages when you've got some really nasty people that only care about themselves. There's nothing to hold them back and to make them operate in a decent, proper way. You know what I mean? So that tends to be some of the differences between those two. It's a really fascinating topic. I'd love to get into that more. Maybe we'll do that more on a business discussion. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions about job search, job interviews, resumes, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what we're here for right now. So I have to kind of try and keep the conversation somewhat related to that. We got either 24 or 32 people. I got two different numbers here. So, but thank you for being here. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. If you are looking to just understand how job search works, what are the methods of getting jobs? How do you do it? Okay, check out that course. That's all my advice in one place. I walk you through not only the posted job market, but also the hidden job market. And that's really where the action is for getting jobs. That's where the good jobs are. And you get them with networking, in a word. That's basically it. And networking is not what a lot of introverts think it is. If you've never really done networking, you have your own sort of opinion about what that word means and what activities that involves. And I know a lot of people, it's really skewed what they think networking is. Some people believe it's some kind of big conspiracy, it's all nepotism, it's all favoritism, it's all some underhanded thing that should be stamped out because it's not fair, it victimizes people. That's not what it is. It's just simply people talking to people. That's networking, you know? You know what I'm saying? So that's the deal. Usually when people are hiring, one of the most critical things they're looking for is enthusiasm. Now, how do you show enthusiasm? Well, there's many ways of showing enthusiasm, right? The problem is there's a bit of a catch-22. When you post a job publicly, right, you say, you know, I'm hiring, it pays this much, and we need you to do this. Now, are you interested? The problem is that every applicant is going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm really excited about this job. You know, I'm very passionate about this." Right? And the problem is that, you know, from the perspective of the employer, you don't know if that's genuine or they're just saying that because they want money. They're only here because there's a steady paycheck involved. They don't really care about this type of work. They're not even really cut out to do this kind of work. They're not passionate about it at all. You know, they don't have any particular affinity for doing it, but they say they're passionate about it because, you know, they know that that might further their cause. So the employer is very skeptical of that, right? However, think of this situation. You're an employer and, you know, you've come to the conclusion that you need to hire an extra person to work in this department, right? But you haven't posted a job, okay? So nobody can discover on the internet or just in public that you are looking for a person, right? But what you do have is occasionally you have some young person that will contact the company and say something like, listen, I have studied this particular thing in school that works in that department. I'm very passionate about it. I've created my own version of it so I can show off like my portfolio, like of work I've done in that area. You know, I know that you guys do work that's kind of, it probably involves this kind of thing, you know. I would love to work for you. You know, I think what you're doing is very, very exciting. Could I get a tour or, you know, could I do some work, maybe an internship or like work for you in some capacity? I just want to do this work and I want to see what you guys do because you're doing what I'm passionate about at a professional level. I would love to be involved with it. Right? Right. So imagine you're the employer and some young person comes and approaches you and says something like that, right? Now, what are the odds that they're genuinely passionate about doing that kind of work? It's probably very high, right? If you were not passionate about doing this kind of work, would you even do this? Would you be approaching companies and saying you are? Like, that's a lot of effort to go to, you know what I mean? So the odds of that person being genuinely passionate and genuinely talented at that work go way up, right? So if you're the person hiring, you would rather look at those people than post a job and just deal with anybody who signed up, right? So that's one reason why this method of job search is so much more effective, right? You know, you're not going to knock on the door of every single employer in your city. That's not possible to do. You're going to start in the areas where, you know, you genuinely have something to contribute and you're genuinely interested. You know, so that's the idea. So that's the principle behind this stuff. So that's why whenever they are looking to fill a position, the people that have first dibs are the ones that are reaching out to the managers of the organization and saying, like, I'd like to work with you and I'd like to, you know, I'm genuinely passionate about this. Can I get a tour? You know, like, you know, this kind of thing. You know, is there some way we could work together? You know, can I volunteer? You know, like, I don't know. So that's why this is effective. Okay. So you don't, in this model, you don't have to schmooze. You don't have to cold call anybody, you know, right? So if you're not really down with the whole like social thing very much, but, you know, you're genuinely passionate about the work itself, you know, this is something you can do. And if you can do a lot of the interaction online, like over social media and stuff, or over email or whatever, to set this up, A lot of introverts can really clean up doing this. So if that's you and you'd like to learn more about it, that's what I cover in my course, okay? And that's what I've talked about on my live streams quite a bit. Where are we here? Let's see. Vital Yurosov 8525 says, how do we get into the hidden job market? Is it through recruiters only? No, it is not. It is not through recruiters. Okay? Recruiters don't deal with the hidden job market. They like to say they do. They like to pretend and project an image that everything goes through them, which it doesn't at all. But they like to project that image, The hidden job market has nothing to do with recruiters. Recruiters deal with the posted job market. That's what they do. They post jobs. They set up job interviews. They filter candidates. That's what they do. That's all the posted job market. Hidden job market is something completely different. The gateway to the hidden job market. God, this thing won't stay up. Hold on. I need a piece of foam. Never leave home without it. Stuff it down your pants just in case. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to move my monitors together. Right. Man, someone's been monkeying around with my mic stand here. Anyway. Okay. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Okay. You do not go through recruiters. You go to the managers. There is a term, hiring manager. Hiring manager simply means the manager that's originated the job, right? So, for example, you work in a company. Let's say it's a plumbing company, right? And there's the chief plumber who runs the plumbing department, right? They employ 15 plumbers that work in the plumbing department, and they all report to the chief plumber, the boss, right? So the chief plumber is the head of the plumbing department, right? They're the ones that actually do the plumbing. Okay, they're not in the HR department, they're not in the marketing department, they're not in the accounting department, they're in the plumbing department, right? You are a plumber, you want to get hired there, right? So if they are looking for plumbers, the chief plumber will be the hiring manager. They're the ones that first decide, okay, I need another plumber, right? They're the one that all the plumbers report to, right? And if they do hire another plumber, the new plumber is going to report to them. They are the boss, right? So they call that person in that role the hiring manager, right? That's what it is, okay? They don't work in the HR department. It's not some fancy HR role. It just means the boss of the new employee, like whoever that vacancy, that new employee, whoever that reports to is the hiring manager, okay? Those are the people you talk to on the hidden job market. They don't work in the HR department. If you try and talk to someone in the HR department, all they're going to tell you is you need to follow our official procedure and go to our website and apply online, right? They're trying to funnel you towards their official procedure, right? Your job in doing networking and trying to tap the hidden job market is to go outside of their official procedure, around their official procedure, So you find out who the chief plumber in the company is. You can do that using a combination of Google Maps to find the company and LinkedIn to see inside the company. You can find, the person that's the chief plumber, their position is called chief plumber. The person is called John Smith. This is their picture. This is their profile. This is who they are, what their background is, and this is their contact information, right? You can message them directly through things like LinkedIn, right? They're a plumber. They don't work in the HR department. As you can appreciate, if you're a plumber, talking to the boss of the plumbers is a lot more fruitful than talking to some HR recruiter that doesn't know the first thing about plumbing, right? That's the other reason why this rules. You're talking to people that speak the same language as you. You know, if you get hired, they would be your boss, right? So that's usually the way in. Now, that's not the only person you talk to. You can also talk to every single manager going up, right? So who's the plumbing manager's boss? Maybe it's the director of operations or something. You could talk to them. Who's their boss? Maybe it's the owner of the company. You could talk to them. You know, sometimes, or not sometimes, often, it's actually more productive to go up higher to these people, you know, for a variety of reasons. Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. Where do we leave off here? Okay, so that was Vital. Sorry, I'm terrible at names. That was Vitally Rusov 8525. Jammed Studio says, I have an upcoming event within my area of discipline. How can I make the most of it when it comes to networking? Well, the important thing is discipline, right? If you've got to lay down some discipline, that's where it can get interesting. How can I make the most of it when it comes to networking? Well, if you have an event, like maybe a trade show or some kind of industry event, like maybe it's like at high level stuff, it could be fundraisers. At lower level, it could be like conferences and like you know, lectures and stuff like that. So I'm not sure who's going to be there. If it's going to be high level people or low level people or some weird mix of the two. You go there, and I mean, I don't know what your goals are. In order to know what you should do, we need to first know what your goals are. You know, let's say you work sort of at the lower level or maybe professional level or somewhere between professional and entry level. The purpose of that might be to meet your counterparts at other companies. Maybe if they're competitors of yours, if you're a sales manager or you're a sales rep or a customer service rep for a company, you can go to one of these events and possibly meet customer service reps from your competitors, you know, different companies, right? Now, why would that be useful? Well, it might be useful if they're hiring at your competitors for a customer service rep like you. You know, if you go down there, what usually helps is to have business cards. You can make up your own business card for like literally $20 US. You could get them printed. Basically, if you have a LinkedIn profile, right, you're basically putting the header of your LinkedIn profile on a business card. Your name, your tagline, maybe a picture, like a headshot, right? And then your contact information, right? So if you put this on a business card, you're currently employed as a customer service rep. You could just say, you know, John Smith, customer service rep, right? You know, this industry, you know, whatever, industrial solutions, you know, whatever. And when you go to this event, every person that you talk to, you take out a business card. If you have a chest pocket or something like that, take out your business card, give it to them. And it's not that that's super useful. It's that you're trying to get their business card. Their immediate reaction will be to give you theirs, right? So you have an instant record of every single person you talk to, right? Okay. And, you know, if you have a more specific goal in mind, then you could go from there. Like who are you trying to talk to? But I mean, that's kind of how these things usually go. So, you know, like I've done tons of like trade shows and stuff like that, where you're meeting people from other companies and all this kind of stuff. And after the fact, you can go to these people, you got their card, you could say, hey, I met you at whatever event. We were talking, I don't know if you recall, we were talking about this. I thought what you said was absolutely fascinating. You were mentioning something about this. Listen, if there's ever an opportunity to work with you on that, please let me know. I thought that was fascinating, and I'd like to investigate that area in the future. You know, something like this. You know, so you could potentially do that to every person you met there if you're trying to get a job or something, or get a new job. There's all kinds of permutations of this stuff. But hopefully that should be that should be like the beginnings of what you can do there. Joshua says, hi, Bill. Hi, Joshua. Thanks for being here. Treeleaf says, fascinating conversation. Thanks for the insights. You're absolutely welcome, Treeleaf. I wish you all the luck in the world. Mosen Man Sour Yar 6446. Now that just rolls off a tongue. I like a good solid nickname. If my resume shows a gap or anomaly, like a space-time anomaly, like a degree taking longer due to mental health issues, well, first of all, do not put mental health issues anywhere on your resume. People shouldn't be able to read that, and they shouldn't be able to, deduce that from your resume, or else like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Should I be transparent about it? Yes and no. You should be transparent once you've had a serious discussion that's gone over many cycles and they're about to offer you a job, or they've just given you an offer and you're negotiating the offer. Then maybe you can be transparent at that point about show-stopping issues like this. But what I'd recommend is that you don't lead with all your problems and weaknesses and liabilities. Like, why do that? People are not going to be interested enough to take a second look. What you want them to do is to fall in love with you, to see like, wow, this person is awesome. We want to hire them, or we want to work with them, whatever you're going after. And if it does come up that you need to reveal this thing about like mental health or whatever, then you bring that up at the end, at the latest possible moment. So you do disclose it if it is relevant, but you don't lead with this. Far from it. You obfuscate that. Lead with your strengths. Make them want to work with you first, then you can have a serious discussion about accommodating you or whatever the purpose would be of talking about this. Okay? You see, the problem is if I don't know you, but I only know what you've written in the chat right here, you strike me as someone that is going to have mental health issues. You won't be able to finish things on time. You're going to need a lot longer because of mental health issues. I'm not talking about your past. I'm talking about in your future. If I were to work with you, that would be my concern. You have mental health issues that cause you not to finish things on time. That's what you're telling me, right? Now, is that the impression you want these people to know about you? No, you presumably would want them to know that, you have all these accomplishments, you have all these capabilities, you're passionate about this and that, and you want to work with them. That would probably get you somewhere further. You know what I mean? So don't put it, I understand maybe where you're coming from. You're coming from a good place. You want to be honest. You want to, in the interests of full disclosure and, being transparent and not lying to each other, you want to disclose things, right? That's great. But see, the problem is if you do it like this up front, you will never get to the point where people will seriously want to work with you, right? Because they're turned off by this. You want to get them to the point where they want to work with you, but then they like you enough and they're interested in you enough to then want to perhaps accommodate you a little bit if you're asking for something reasonable, then they're willing to do it and then everybody's happy, right? So that's kind of how these things work. Okay, so you go on to say, could that affect my job prospects or how I discuss it in an interview? You want to avoid discussing it in an interview at all costs. Okay, because like the moment you say it, or any weakness, really, it's the kiss of death, right? And the reasoning is that if I'm having my very first discussion with you, and already I know all your weaknesses and stuff, think of the ones that I don't yet know of. If I'm already like talking to you, I'm already spotting all kinds of weaknesses, all kinds of red flags, all kinds of concerns. If I keep digging, it seems like I'm going to find even more. So sorry, deal breaker, let's end this here. And I'm going to go with someone else that I haven't spotted immediate, obvious red flags with, right? That's the idea. Okay, so don't lead with this. Get it off your resume, get it out of your interviews, okay? And if it is some big issue that you must deal with them before they employ you, bring it up at the last possible moment, usually in the negotiation phase after you've received a written offer. Then they will actually want to work with you to accommodate it, not before. The Admiral says, thanks for all the info, Jim. Okay, who are you talking to? My name isn't Jim, but if you are talking to me. I had an interview recently and it went well until I mixed up the interviewers' names. Okay. How important is, just call everyone Jim, you know? And if they call you on it, just say, don't worry, I do that to everyone, you know? It's a term of endearment. It's cultural, you know? And then they can't say anything. How important is it to remember people's names and details correctly in an interview? It's pretty important, the Admiral. It is pretty important. You see, if you don't, a lot of people will interpret it on some level as a sign of disrespect. The way that works is they think like, oh, I'm not important for you to remember my name. That's one element of like more advanced communication skills. Remember people's names. Use their name when you're addressing them. Okay? That's how you do it. If they tell you your name, like usually you tell each other your names when you're introduced, you do an introduction. It's like, hey, Bill, it's good to meet you, and they say, oh, hey, Jim, it's good to meet you too. Right? Now, if they say their name and you just go poof, poof, it's gone. In a puff of blue smoke, you've forgotten their name, right? And then you have to ask them, what's your name again? Like that's a sign of disrespect. It's like you're communicating that they're not important enough for you to commit their name to memory. I know that seems weird. That's not necessarily what's going on, but that's how it comes across. That's what the perception is, As opposed to the alternative, you say your name at the beginning. You say, "Oh, my name's Jim," and they say, "Oh, Jim, it's great to have you here." And then later on, they're talking to you, and they say, "So, Jim, what have you found? What's going on with you?" Or something like that. It's a sign of respect. You remember who I am. I'm important to you. Okay, so do your best to try and do that. If necessary. Rely on other things like maybe writing it down or something like I don't know. If you're doing a panel interview, if you have the business cards, like I was mentioning earlier, if you just take $20, whatever it is, to make up your own business cards, a great thing about going to a job interview is that if it's a panel interview, you've got business cards, you start handing them out at the very beginning when you're introduced to people. You shake their hand or whatever. Here's my card. And then they give you theirs. And it's like, awesome. So when you sit down at the table, you can place, like maybe there's 4 people across from you. You can place the 4 business cards on the table, like lined up to the person, right? So like, I now know who everyone's names are and what they're, like, who are they? What's their role, right? So when I get a question from this person over here, I say, oh, Brenda. I can tell that, Brenda's the chief accountant. That's who's asking the question, right? Really helps. Hopefully that makes sense. Jam Studio says, how much of hiring occurs through referrals and direct CVs being sent to the recruiter as opposed to online applications from your experience? Well, you're mixing two things there. You're saying how much of hiring occurs through referrals, right? But then you're talking about the recruiter. Okay? Listen, it's not my experience. It's what the reality is. And earlier, like I just did this maybe 45 minutes ago, less. Okay, so I'm at ChatGPT, and this is what I said. I said, okay, so if all the jobs are posted that I could possibly get, of all the jobs that are posted that I could possibly get, how many of those, what percentage of them are actually posted publicly that I'd be able to discover in an internet job search, right? And then this is what ChatGPT says. I do this because so you guys can see this is not coming from me. This is the reality. Okay, the percentage of jobs that are posted publicly and that can be found on an internet job search is actually quite low, estimated to be around 20 to 30%. Actually, like I was saying earlier, it's more in the area of 15 to 20%. The majority of job openings, especially high quality or senior roles, forget about that. We're not talking about high quality. We're talking about professional, entry-level, worker-level jobs. They're filled through networking and referrals rather than through public job boards. Many employers prefer to hire candidates through word of mouth or, well, ignore this. That's not true. Meaning a substantial portion of the job market is hidden. This is known as the hidden job market and tapping it requires strategies like direct outreach, building relationships, and leveraging your network. See, all of these, the way you tap the hidden job market, it's through networking, right? Now, these are three things in the world of networking, right? But there are many others. I did a video 2 months ago, I think, on my YouTube channel, this YouTube channel, called How I'd Get a Job If I Had to Get a Job. And the video is 45 minutes long. I walk you through 11 methods of getting a job. Okay? Most of them are in the hidden job market. Okay, so you can check that out. Okay, but this is not my opinion. This is the reality. I mean, personally, I haven't, like, the last time I got a job that was posted publicly, I think, was 2008. And that was where they reached out to me. They had it posted, but then they contacted me. You know, like everything I've done is on the hidden job market, even in my corporate career before that ended. And then, like, I'm a consultant now. So, you know, it's all hidden it's all in the hidden job market. This is where the action is. This is where all the good jobs are. And this is where 80% of the jobs are. This is where you should be looking. But one thing you need to know is that you don't go through recruiters. Recruiters deal exclusively with the posted job market, right? They try and create this perception that everything has to go through them. It doesn't. You know, you go to the manager directly. You don't go to a recruiter that the manager has hired to be their grunt. You know, that's the idea. So learn all you can about this stuff. Like, I mean, I have a course that walks you through everything, but just go to like ChatGPT or, you know, whatever AI bot of your choice, or just go to Google and look up like search results through articles and things. You know, learn like the role of the recruiter, the role of the hiring manager. Who is the hiring manager? You know, and things like this. Learn what networking is, what it involves, all the different things in there. I've got a lot of resources on my channel, but my point is that this is not coming from me. This is not some weird personal opinion or some internet, you know, some YouTube guru thing. It's not. Go out and do your own independent research and learn all this stuff. It will be to your advantage, you know? Okay? Don't believe recruiters when recruiters say that, you know, the hidden job market goes through them, because it doesn't, you know? It's like recruiters, the way what they're paid to find candidates. A hiring manager in some way, shape, or form employs them to find candidates for a vacancy. The recruiter doesn't create the vacancy. The recruiter doesn't create the job requirements. They're given the job requirements and they're told, find me some candidates that have all of these. And then when you found them, do a basic filter, you know, make sure they're not like insane or they're lying on their resume or whatever. Then I want you to book, you know, all the job interviews, organize the interviews, make sure that, you know, I can attend them and make sure that I'm invited to them so I can attend. And, you know, when you've done that, get back to me. You know, like that's the role of a recruiter. That's how they make their money. Whether they're internal to an organization or they're external, if they work in recruitment and selection, that's their function. So they have nothing to do with, you know, hidden jobs that a manager may know about, but have not engaged them to deal with, have not contracted to them to find applicants for. Okay. So to answer your question, how much of hiring occurs, like, well, we just asked ChatGPT. It said 20 to 30% is in the posted market. It's actually less than that. It's like 15 to 20% approximately is in the posted market. The rest are in the hidden job market. So 80 to 85% is all hidden. Paleo Patient says, I have a telephone interview coming up. Just wanted to ask, what kind of questions would they ask me? Thank you. Okay, they're going to ask you two kinds of questions. One, the first kind are going to be the standard job interview questions. There's about 10 of these. They're the things like, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your salary expectations? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why did you leave your last job? Do you have any questions for us? How do you handle stress? Those are the standard job interview questions. There's a couple more. They're also going to ask you behavioral interview questions. This is where it starts with, tell me about a time, right? So your answer is going to be a custom answer. It's going to be a story from your past, something you did, right? Everybody's going to have a different answer for those. And you go about preparing for those slightly differently. Okay. I have done videos on my channel. There's a lot of people that have done videos or articles or whatever talking about how to answer each one of these questions. Obviously, I'm going to recommend you go see my stuff. But like, I've done videos on all of those. So you can watch the videos and learn the answers. And you should be good for what are you going to be asked. Magic Beans 24 says, hi, Bill. Today was the first day of my internship. I thought they were going to say today was the first day of the rest of my life. The first day of my internship. The commute was long, 4 hours per day. That is long. That is very long. That's 8 hours of your day. An entire third of your day is like traveling to and fro. Or 4 hours, depending on how you read that. Pay is low and I hate the work. My gut tells me I should quit. How do I gracefully quit? It's been 1 day. Magic Beans. It goes on. Again, I can't stick it out and give it a try for another week. I know this won't work out for me in the short or long term. Okay. Listen, like, I would normally try and talk you out of it. I'd say, like, look, just stick around for at least 3 days and just see if this is something you can, maybe you got a bad first impression. I don't know. That's honestly what I would do. And I still want to do that. But if you're telling me that it's pointless to do that, saying, why would you care about gracefully quitting? Like, you're doing something that's very ungraceful. You're there for 1 day and you say, absolutely not. Screw this and screw all of you. Listen, I've done a video recently called Quit Like a Pro. Watch that video. That'll be the answer to your question. It's like, within the last 10 videos, if you go to my channel and look at like videos and order them by date, you look at the most recent stuff. It's like within the last 10 videos, I've done one called Quit Like a Pro. So watch that video and that'll answer your question. Sorry to hear that, Magic Beans. That doesn't sound great. Hopefully it's at least a learning experience, if nothing else. SA340 says, hi, Bill. I did an interview for a senior position, and the hiring manager, the GM of the company, said he will do a case study in the next phase. Your thoughts on this and how to prepare? Oh, so this is like, the next phase of your interview. Okay. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, I like normally, first of all, I don't know what job you're up for. So you say, when you say the general manager of the company, is that like the owner or is that like the CEO or, I guess you're doing the interview with them. They're probably just going to ask you like business questions. I mean, that's what a case study is. You do that in business school where they explain like, here is, a situation. What company A does this, company B does that. Which one would you expect to get a better result, or something like that. Company A is set up this way. it prioritizes this, it has this policy. You know, if you are trying to pivot the company or change it to do more of this other type of work, how would you go about it? You know, like stuff like that. They can ask like any possible business question under the sun in a case study. I'm not sure what the context is, so I don't know what they might be wanting from you. Presumably it would be like, you know, pertaining to your history, right? So for example, if you have a history of running a department, you know, they may say, okay, here's a case study. Hypothetically, you've got a department that is doing this. This is the problem they're having. This is how they're set up. How would you fix it? You know, something like that, right? Like, so it's a ability for you to show off your knowledge and your skills, you know, of how to fix things and how to work in that job, how to make business decisions, you know, things like that, right? So I mean, this is all just guesswork on my part, but it could be that would be like a semi-intelligent use of this. You know, I mean, I don't understand why they have to call it a case study and be all formal about it. I would just have a informal conversation about something and just say, hey, I got a question for you. Let's pretend, you know, this was the case and you were running this. What's your, you know, attitude to solve that? What's your approach to dealing with that? What would you do? You know, some people do this, some people do that. Like, what approach would you take? You know, it doesn't have to be this big formal thing, but I don't know if you can really prepare for that. The only thing I could suggest is like going to things like ChatGPT and like we could try it. Okay, so I have a job interview where I have a job interview with the general manager of a small company. And we've already done the sort of first part of the interview, which was pretty standard. But they've told me that they're going to ask me about some case study type things in the next interview. What could I possibly do to prepare for that? I'm not sure what that involves or the nature of the questions. And how could I prepare? You know, we'll do this and just see if ChatGPT can come up with anything here. Not that it's necessarily the be all end all, but you know. Okay, so case study interviews are used to assess how you think through real world problems, your problem solving approach, and your ability to apply relevant skills. Okay, so here's a breakdown of what to expect. So they're testing you to see if you understand the role. Okay, you know, and things like this. I mean, you could read through it. Use the STAR method. I don't know if that really applies. Prepare frameworks, research the company practice. I think it's just going through a laundry list of generic job interview advice. Yeah, like, for example, let's say you ran a marketing department, okay? And you're up for like, you know, a job running a marketing department under this general manager or something, okay? If they're giving you a case study type interview, which I didn't know was a term before, but I guess it is, you know, they may ask you things like, okay, if you're running a marketing department and this is the problem and this is the setup, what would you do, right? So in terms of preparing for that, other than just relying on your knowledge that you have, it might make sense if you researched like, okay, marketing departments, how are they set up and how do you run one in situations that have been different from my background? You know what I mean? So depending on what they ask you, you can draw from not only your own experience, but you also know, like if you haven't been to business school or something, you'd be able to draw also from the knowledge that, okay, in certain industries or certain situations, you know, you encounter this type of problem. Well, it's a different setup, it's a different dynamic, and you employ strategies such as these to solve those types of problems, you know? So coming to the interview forearmed with that can help. The reason why people go to business school, by the way, just, I don't know if this is even what we're talking about, but I just want to say this. The reason why you would learn business is because normally, if you're learning everything from experience, That's great. You know the stuff you've seen. The problem is that if they give you a problem that you've never solved before personally, nor have you seen anyone solve in front of you, you won't know what to do, right? That's why you go to business school. That's why you get the education, because it enables you to know what to do to solve a problem that you haven't actually dealt with before, right? Because you know the theory behind it. That's the idea. This is the, because that's a common question. Why is it like education versus experience? Like what's the difference? That's the difference. Experience is a lot better for certain things, but education is a lot better for certain other things. So that's the idea. Imeng 3836 says, what to do to not lose in the very last stage when feeling that I did ask for more money than probably their budget. In the same time, don't want them to notice I'm asking for less and being desperate. Are you trying to say, like, how do I answer the salary question? Because that's what it sounds like. Okay, if you're in a job interview and they ask you, what are your salary expectations? I'm just going to adjust the brightness of my camera a little bit while I talk here. Here's what you do. The first thing you say is, it's too soon to tell. I can't tell. I need more details I need to understand the nature of the job more before I can give you an answer on that. That is true if they ask you this, like in the first question out of their mouth on their first job interview. They haven't even told you what the benefits are, the benefit package. How are you supposed to give an intelligent answer on what salary you need? It's silly, right? Sometimes that'll work and they'll just go to the next question. A lot of times it won't. They'll press you further. They'll say, no, we need a number. What salary do you need? The second thing you go to is you say, listen, you throw the question back at them. You say, listen, this job was posted publicly. That means it has been officially approved by the company. That means that the compensation has also been officially approved by the company. So, can I ask what it is, right? Now, if they tell you, you say, oh, the range is here to here, then your answer is, that works for me, Okay, so sometimes that'll work. Sometimes it doesn't. Then you go to the third and final phase of this, where they say, no, we're not going to tell you the range, but we need you to still give us a number. You say, okay, fair enough. The only thing I can do at this point is say that somewhere between here and here should be fine. Okay? You give them a range, a wide range. Now, those two numbers, like the low point and the high point, they're not ridiculous. They're a stretch, but they're not like ridiculous. Okay? So you say, look, all I can say at this point is like somewhere between here and here, somewhere in there should be okay, right? And if they press you further, you say, like, listen, like that's the best I can give you right now, right? And you leave it at that. Now, that's how you answer that question. The only time you get into this further is if you have a written offer. They've sent you a written offer. They want you to sign it and return it. That's when you're negotiating, right? Okay, and that's where you can push for more, right? And in a nutshell, you would do something like, you say, this is good, this is good, this is good. Oh, the vacation, that's less than I'm used to. But you know what? For you guys, for this job, sure, that's good. Oh, sick days. Oh, I'm used to having more of those, but I suppose, for this job, because, it's you guys, sure, whatever. I'll give you that. This is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Okay, that's great. Listen, I need you to change this number to this. And if you do that, send it back. I'll sign it. I can start whenever you want, right? You've given them concessions. You've given them a lot of concessions. You're asking for this one thing, right? That's all you need. And then you could start whenever they want. That's how you do it. Okay. So that's how you answer in an interview. And that's how you answer in the offer stage in a nutshell. And that's how you handle the salary question. Hopefully that helps. Where are we here? I did an interview for, okay. What to do, not lose the last stage. Okay, there you go. And remember, the last stage, the only thing they really care about really is how likable you are. That's really what it comes down to. At that point, the last stage of the interview process, you're qualified. They know you're qualified. The only question is, which person would they prefer to work with? It's purely based on charisma and that kind of stuff, right? So just give it your best shot, and that's all you can do. It's more based on random chance than it is on anything you have control over. So just be aware of that. Richard says, "Oh my God, I love this podcast. I've learned so much already." Well, thank you, Richard. That's very high praise indeed. And thank you for being a member. SJB says, "I was asked during an interview, what is a passion project you're working on?" And I said, "I do have not a project, but I am working on improving my listening skills." How would you have answered that question? No offense, but that was not a great answer to that. Without having a passion project, well, you could say, like, do you have any hobbies? Like, let's say, I don't know, you're a marketing, I'm going to make something up on the spot. Let's say you're a marketing director or a marketing person, and you're interested in, I don't know, racing model planes, like RC planes. I don't know. I know nothing about this stuff. So you could say, well, something I've been doing kind of outside of my job is I've been racing like RC planes for many years, just as a hobby. And I've noticed that, the branding of the planes, either from the manufacturer or from the individual racers, leaves much to be desired, And so I've been having conversations with a few of the racers that race these planes, about the marketing elements of, just the branding, the livery of the planes, or putting their logo on there, or, promoting their products more. It's something I've just, because I do marketing, and this is my hobby. And so I've been combining them into sort of, just sort of having a lot of discussions with people about how that works, how the marketing side of things affects that industry. So, I see marketing everywhere. I see opportunities everywhere. And that's something that I've been sort of casually pursuing. Like, I don't know, something like that. I just made that up off the top of my head. You could call it a project. You can call anything a project. Where are we here? So, what I'm saying? It's like, strategically, okay, why would they ask that question? Well, strategically, they would probably ask that question to see where your heart lies, right? If you're a marketing person and you're trying to get a job in the marketing department, and they ask you, what passion projects do you work on? And you say something like, oh, rock climbing, because what I really want to do, is rock climbing. I don't want to do marketing. One day I'm going to be a rock climber. I'm going to be internationally famous rock climber. That's what I want to do. So that's what I'm working on. That sends them a signal. That says, well, marketing isn't really your thing. You're not passionate about it. You're not like sleeping and breathing it. We want someone that's dedicated, and that seems to not be you. So when they ask a question like that, they're probably fishing for you to say something to do with the job that you're going up for, either the same area or the same skills or the same activity. Something like that. That's probably the reason behind the question. This keeps jumping on me. Where are we here? User 98416 says, for someone, wait a minute. Okay, hold on, everyone. We've reached the 2-hour mark nearly, and I have another live stream that actually starts now. So I guess we're just going to go into the time for the other live stream. I'm going to answer these questions quickly, and then I'm going to end the stream, and then I'm going to be back on my channel a moment later on the second live stream. Okay, so if you want that to continue, that's what's happening. Okay, so let's see. For someone who's a fresher without any special talent in a third world country that is overcrowded and highly competitive, what would be your best advice? Or is this no place for me? Sorry, that's unanswerable. I suppose I mean, I would make a joke and say, go kill yourself, but no. Listen, I'm sure you've got like skills. I'm sure you've got abilities, and that makes you in demand to a degree. So it's just a matter of connecting with the people that need whatever you can do. It really doesn't matter about economic conditions that much less than you would think. It's just a matter of connecting with the people that could use you. So it's just that simple. Someone says, case study is a real world situations question from their daily tasks to see how do you react and start working on it. They do it so basically to test your practice. Yeah, that's kind of in as much words what I believe I said. Planet Batty says, I don't know yet what I want to do yet. Is tech sector viable with coming of AI, or will most of us be replaced? Should I enter core electronics instead? I can't answer that for you. It depends on what you want to do. AI is not going to replace everybody with everything. It's just another thing in a long chain of things, of innovations and new technologies that have disrupted things. It's just that simple. Some people will be affected, but most won't. It'll enhance most people's job in the same way that the internet came in and everybody felt, feared it would replace everyone. It didn't. It just enhanced most people's jobs. It did eliminate some jobs, but just a few in a certain couple of areas, and that's it. But it created a ton of others, right? So you do what you want. I mean, electronics is not going away. And I have a degree in electrical engineering. I know what I'm talking about. It's not going away. Yeah, we got fancier tools for designing things, but it doesn't just disappear. Where are we here? Username says, hey, any advice for blue collar dudes? I was about to start my apprenticeship, but I'm a bit confused because it's so much different from an ordinary job. Like, what do I say? I mean, I don't know what the context is. If you're a blue collar dude, learn all you can about your trade or your craft. Whatever it is you do, your vocation, learn all you can about it, if that's what you truly want to do. Beyond that, learn business. There's a lot of people that clean up. Like if you have a skill trade or some kind of skill that you have that's in demand, plus business, you can kick ass. You can really, really clean up. Business is the scientific study of how to make money. That's what it is. So you tack that on in conjunction with any really valuable skill, and you're going to do well. Okay? Having social skills is also extremely important because, first of all, I'm an introvert and I feel a certain kinship for a lot of introverts out there. I know how you feel overlooked and you feel that people care about superficial BS all the time instead of like real, true skills. And they don't see your value because your value is hidden behind your social skills. I feel for you and you're not imagining it. That's a very real thing. But on the other hand, the world works because people are connected to each other. Think of how a company makes money. How do you create money? How do you make money? You sell something in some way, shape, or form to someone else. That's how economies are created. That's why they exist, right? So at the very least, you need to be connected to your customers, but you're also connected to everyone else, like your suppliers, consultants, regulators, your competitors, you know what I mean? Like it just goes on. There's connections between people. And if you understand how to make those connections and how to improve them and how to make them on demand, the world is your oyster. I hate to say it as an introvert. Introverts are the ones that innovate the world and push the world forward. But unfortunately, we are taken advantage of by extroverts who understand how to make the connections, right? Both are needed. So if you're someone who has genuine talent and skills, but you understand business, and you also have been developing your social skills, and you don't shy away from it, you are in a position to really, really clean up. Okay, that's what I'll say. Does having a too common or unusual name affect your interview? It might. I mean, people are complex and they have all kinds of like biases. But I mean, I hate the term biases because at what point does a preference or an opinion become a bias? You know what I'm saying? It's a very gray area. It's very fuzzy. You know, so you go and interview with one person, they'll have a major problem with it. You go and interview with another person, they won't care at all. You know, I mean, there's like, that's the beauty of these things. You know, it's a numbers game. Don't worry about it. Your name is your name. You know, try and make it as practical as possible. Maybe shorten your name if it's extremely long, just for convenience, you know, or something. I don't know, you know, and then just get on with it. You know, you're going to be fine. I have completed all rounds and now I'm on the very last contract details. So they ask me once again, what's my expectation, even though we discussed that at the beginning and they didn't say no to it. Was this about the salary? Yeah, this was like the case study thing, and I'm on the very last contract detail, so they asked me once again, what's my expectation? Sorry, I'm losing, like, you know, this was part of a story, and I can't remember like all the details of the story. I'm just trying to quickly go back. This was the general manager, last stage, case study, real world questions. And now you're saying, I have completed all rounds. I'm on the very last contract details. It asked me once again, what's my expectation, even though we discussed at the beginning. I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what industry you're in. It's very hard for me to like answer that. You know, just do your best. That's all I can say. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer to that. User says, thanks for the advice. Do you go live every day? No, just Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I just had 3 weeks off live streaming, but normally it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Anyway, I have to sign off. Check out my courses. We talked about this. If you're trying to get a job, you don't know how to go about doing it. It's all my advice right there. Okay. We mentioned this very briefly. Best bang for the buck around. If you want to learn business, and you don't want to go back to school, you don't want to pay through the nose like 5 figures to get this. Okay. Check that out. Link in the description box. And finally, what is more pertinent to our conversation today is this. Okay, that's a course called Write Like a Professional. That helps you with high-level communication skills. Okay, it is centered around written communication skills, but it focuses more on what to say rather than, just, purely on writing, right? That's what it focuses on. So if you are looking to climb the ladder, get into management type positions, that kind of stuff, this is basically a prerequisite. You need to have communication skills. You need to have a certain level of maturity, or else you're not a contender. No matter what experience you have, no matter how experienced you are, or how great your technical skills are, you will just never be a contender without, above average communication skills and a few other things. So if this is part of your goal and you're wanting to learn high-level communication skills, check out that course. Link in the description box below. I have to sign off now. I will be back on this channel in just a couple of minutes in another live stream called Honest HR Nitrous. So if you still got more questions, that's not a problem. Just join me on that live stream in a couple of minutes, okay? Thanks, guys. Take care. I'll see you soon. Best of luck.